Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a Screenwriter's Rant on what else everybody's talking about it in movies. No Time to Die. They kill off James Bond. Spoilers, and I don't feel bad about spoiling this movie, because if you knew going into this that Bond was going to die, would you even go see the movie? Shut up, Little Joan. I'm trying to talk about movies. There you go. You happy? Okay, yes. It's all about you, I know. No, you wouldn't. Doing a movie about James Bond dying is like doing an episode of Parker Lewis Can't Lose, where Parker Lewis just loses the entire episode. But this is part of the woke ideology of Hollywood. I wrote about it in Hollywoke. It's, if anything, gotten worse since I've written the book. And I think it's a combination of several things. The first thing is just Hollywood, the nature of Hollywood. You have to understand they follow trends, because in previous eras it was always about money, right? So there was the trend of the X-Files, let's say. And that trend was, oh, you got to do a conspiracy theory kind of show or conspiracy theory kind of movie. And they were looking for X-Files back in the 90s. X-Files scripts, not the actual show, but scripts like that. There was a time of thrillers. Looking for thrillers. Sometimes they'd look for comedies. Sometimes they'd look for romance or romantic thrillers or erotic or romantic thrillers. There have been a million kinds of things they've looked for over the years. And they follow these trends because someone does a hit, that mega hit, and they follow that hit right down the rabbit hole. Because even if, you know, let's say, at the time of the X-Files, you do an X-Files knockoff, and it's a total knockoff, and everybody looks at it and goes, oh my god, this is like such a rip-off of the X-Files. It doesn't matter, because it'll probably make money, because that stuff is so popular. You're just milking it for a tenth of the money, and you're still making money, because the X-Files was so popular at one point, or whatever was popular at one point. Rocky was huge at one point. They were making boxing movies or sports movies, and you know, movies like Rocky. James Bond at his heyday, they were making other spy stuff like The Saint and Get Smart and the Avengers, not superhero Avengers, the other Avengers. And because spy stuff was big for a while. Now what's big is woke. Okay, so that's the major factor. That's what started it. The idiots in Hollywood who every year get more and more desperate, stupid, inbred, and I mean that literally. The atmosphere, the mental atmosphere is so inbred. You have people who are just trying to game the system. If you remember the baseball movie with Brad Pitt, what the hell was that called? Moneyball, right? Moneyball was all about like looking at not baseball in the classic sense where you try to get good players and good positions or whatever, but you know, looking at statistics, you know, and making a team winning using statistical analysis, right? It was a different way to look at baseball. Excuse me a sec. Go ahead, Joe. Oh, we just went walkie. She's a little excited. So they looked at that statistical analysis and realized, hey, we don't have to follow the old ways. We can make money this way. So what Hollywood's done is followed that formula for years, and for many years it worked. They literally can't understand why it's not working. And what you have to understand about the woke is getting caught up in their trap. It's very Kafka-esque, right? So once you acknowledge, like, for instance, if you say to them, if they say to you, like, well, you know, there's too many white people, white males in your movie, and you say, well, I guess we could, you know, throw in a few people of color, they take you down that path, and there's no returning from that path until you fire the woke person. You literally have to fire them or just completely ignore them. Once you listen to even a small portion of their advice, that's the wedge to get in. That's the wedge to get racial identity politics into the situation. And the reason they do that is because the woke control everything once they get you in on the wokeness. Once you're in on it, you can't get out until you get out completely. I was talking to a guy today at the book fair, and we were talking about there was a couple of companies that got rid of woke idiots, and the way they do it is they basically just announce to the employees there's not going to be any more talk of politics at work. And most of them just quit. They just quit in frustration. A few of them will stick around and try to sue you because it's not about the money. It's not about winning the lawsuit. It's not about anything other than the ideology. They're so radicalized. They believe they've been radicalized, unfortunately, by the Trump administration. Not that it's their fault. It's really the fault of the media and other factors. They've been radicalized to the point that they think they're in this magical resistance that's going to cure the world and bring about a utopia in which no racism exists, where everyone is equal, where everything is wonderful and bright, and anyone who even doubts that, forget about, signing on to it. If you even question it, you're the enemy. And people in Hollywood don't understand that. The moderates in Hollywood didn't understand that, and they're being undermined at every turn. Once you let these people in, they do not stop. They do not care if the entire studio collapses underneath them. They will walk away from the rubble and say, well, at least we made our point. They can walk away with all destroyed careers, and they'll just go somewhere else and do it again. So it makes no sense, but it also doesn't surprise me what they've done with Bond. He is, to them, an icon that needed to be destroyed and deconstructed. They needed to destroy this franchise in order to bring about a new franchise in which they will tout, this woman of color or whatever as the new James Bond. No one will go see the movie, of course. And then they will say, well, the movie going public is racist. If you don't go see this, you're a racist, a bigot. And it won't matter that the movie makes a 90th of what a Bond movie will make. It won't matter that this movie probably tanks unbelievably so badly that they never make another Bond movie again, or at least not for 20 years. They do not care. They do not care. And my understanding is, I think Amazon bought it, but Amazon's going pretty woke, so I wouldn't expect them to revive Bond. They should. They would make billions, literally billions of dollars if they made Bond the right way. I would say you would reboot him back into the Cold War and keep him there forever. Because that's the way Bond works best, in my view. So, No Time to Die is, and here's the villain. He's not a bad villain, actually. I mean, at least he's got a look. Here's Bond's girlfriend that he dies over. Here's a car. Here's another car. October 8th. I mean, this is... And you can also tell, too, by the way the critics are falling all over themselves to say this movie is good. There's just too much money involved. You can expect the Rotten Tomatoes thing to be... I'm guessing it'll be totally rigged in favor of the movie. Either way, both sides. They'll change it, they'll freeze it, they'll do whatever they have to. There's too much money at stake. This is an example of a franchise that's too successful, and the Hollywood guys have painted themselves into a corner, so they literally are preparing to either try to force people to see this movie, or, buy their way out of it somehow. Buy their way to good press, so they can excuse it by saying, well, the bigots ruined this movie. And it's a shame, because Daniel Craig had a great start. He got to do Casino Royale the way Ian Fleming probably meant it to be, as opposed to the comedy they did. Not that that was bad. Now he has to go out probably in the worst Bond movie ever. And up until now, that had been Quantum of Solace, if you've ever seen that. That was pretty awful. But even that, I mean, I gotta figure, was probably better than seeing Bond die at all. Now, of course, you could bring back Bond. I mean, there's a million ways to work around it. But, as long as the woke Hollywood idiots control things, good luck. There's just too much money at stake. Until, Bond is so devoid of interest, that they finally handed over to, you know, essentially a filmmaker who's an actual fan of the old stuff, and, you know, this wokeness dies down. Forget it. The other thing I think that's happening, and I know you're going to call me a conspiracy nut, but I think it's true. I think the Chinese are attempting to, because you have to understand the entire Chinese country and all their businesses are operated by the Communist Party, right? So imagine, if you would, that Joe Biden got to make the overall decisions in Hollywood, right? And he got to use the government in the United States to make sure no other movie in any other country could be successful. It wasn't the Hollywood guys pressuring the government and changing the rules a little bit. It was actually Joe Biden, you know, putting down the orders to, like, well, here, you go lose money on this movie just so people watch it and we can get the numbers up or whatever. That's the kind of things, like, the Chinese government can do. They have no rules. There's absolutely no rules. If the Chinese Communist government wants it done, it's done. They are banning, you know, quote unquote girly men from their movies, and they're banning people from playing video games, and, you know, and I think it's because they want to take over the movie industry. They know they have a huge market there. You cannot, at least in Hollywood, Hollywood got too addicted to the money coming out of Hollywood, and they effed over Disney with Shang-Chi, in my view. So, I mean, they could F over the guys for No Time to Die, and perhaps they did. I think a lot of that has to do with China in the background pushing wokeness, because they know it's divisive. They know it's a sore spot in the United States. You know, gender identity, racial identity, all this stuff. It's just dividing people here over and over again. So, do I think they had a big meaning about the James Bond movie and how to ruin it? No. They're just, in general, they have so many spies in the West. And keep in mind, the Chinese communists have literally millions of spies. It's been revealed that they had the estimate was 1.2 million spies in the West. That would be America, UK, Europe, Australia, you know, any Western country, essentially. Possibly Japan. I'm sure they have spies there. They have people, right? I mean, that's one thing you could say the Chinese have. They have tons and tons of people. So you ship literally thousands and thousands of people to overwhelm the system, to get in positions of power and use that power to undermine things here and help the Chinese over there. Now, you can't do it directly, obviously. You have to be very careful, because some people have been caught and deported and kicked out of the country or whatever, but when you talk about something as unimportant in the bigger scheme of things as films, who's going to check it? There's no Hollywood task force out of Washington that's checking to see about cultural influences there. And this has been something that goes back to the Soviets. The Soviets spent millions of dollars over the decades, from the 40s all the way into the modern era until they collapsed, influencing Hollywood, because they realized the culture could be influenced. And the Chinese have much more money. They have a ton more money. They have massive influence in our media. They own huge swaths of it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they would want this. And they don't have to do it with every single movie, but they do it with enough push. They just need to sprinkle enough money in the right places and whisper into enough ears to get it done. So you have these people in Hollywood who think they're on a grand crusade to change the world and make it a better place for everyone, because, you know, it'll be a better place in the world if Indiana Jones retires and a brave, independent woman stars as Indiana Jones, who, by the way, I think was involved in this. Somebody was saying, I don't know. So what can you do? Well, obviously, in my opinion, you should not spend your money to go see No Time to Die. Let this movie die. Let them make as little money. Let this be the worst Bond movie in terms of box office in history. No matter how much I got to see it, it can't be that bad. Or, you know, even if you think, oh, well, I'm sure it's fine. You're killing off Bond, man. I mean, if you're not a fan of Bond, if you want to go see him die. And if you do, well, obviously you're in the other camp, so go F yourself. So, you know, this isn't going to win any awards or things. And And don't listen to the critics. I would say don't ever listen to the critics. The kind of critics you want to listen to are on YouTube. Some rando like me who just spouts off, because at least I'm being honest. At least I'm giving you an honest take. I'm not taking tens of thousands of dollars from studios that tell you to go see Bond or to tell you to go see this movie. I just react to stuff, and you can see by some of my comments, some of my opinions are not that popular. You won't get that at big corporate entities, because they want every opinion to be popular, so they take every popular opinion. You know, there hasn't been real movie criticism in decades. Not really. A friend of mine who worked on a documentary about famous movie critic, and she was, oh god, the name escapes me. I forgot her name already. But you know, she could make or break a film because she was that powerful a critic. And sometimes she didn't like a film, you know. But when's the last time you read a review about a movie, say like a James Bond film, and just got a horrible review, horrible review? You don't. There's too much money, and you can buy off all the critics. It's not illegal, not really. I mean, it's definitely unethical. It's definitely dishonest. I don't think it's illegal. And you have to understand that behind the scenes, and this has been a problem in comic books, especially with the comic book movies, they just outright bribe you. I mean, essentially what they'll do is they set up a press junket, they bring in these critics, they get to see the movie early, they meet the stars, they get collectibles, they get fed, it's very fancy, it's a 3-day trip, you're on the set. These are nobody's back in their hometowns. This is the biggest thing that happens to them, and all you have to do is say the movie's great. That's it. So you get a 3-day vacation. You get to write it all off on your taxes. You get paid while you're doing it. You get applauded by everybody at work. You get applauded by all the fans who also think it's a good movie. You get free stuff, free food, probably some money. Certainly money in the sense of the free stuff. Why wouldn't you do it? Well, if you had principle, you wouldn't do it. But guess what? If you go on one of these little junkets and then come back and say, oh, this movie wasn't very good at all and I had lots of problems with it, guess who suddenly drops off the list? Yeah. So Hollywood mostly did this to themselves. They invited in China. I mean, you know, they continue to just follow trends, and they're following Twitter. They get the trends off of Twitter. And there was a time like you could kind of gauge Twitter, and there were some trending things that were actual trends. But now, in my view, Twitter is heavily curated. So you've got people who, and I encounter this all the time because I'm on it quite a bit. Surprisingly, I got off it for a while, but I got back on it in order to advertise my books. But I fly under the radar because I'm not famous. If anybody really takes a look at my videos and my books, even, they'll probably kick me off of Twitter or shout at me or whatever. And it's not, so what you're getting from Twitter is one side of the argument, and it's very, very woke. Very, very woke. So I won't be surprised if No Time to Die trends about what a great movie it is, and people on there will live in that bubble and go, oh, it must be a good movie, I'll probably go see it. Because people want to be popular, they want to be liked. So it's just like high school, right? If somebody is if something is popular in high school and you're the only one that doesn't like it, unless you're like me and like to be a social pariah, you are going to be ostracized. And most people, they can't take that. They don't want that. So they say, oh no, it's great, I love it. I love it. So do you love James Bond? You don't want to be a social pariah, do you? Anyhow, that's my rant. I know it's a big deal, but again, I say just don't go see the movie. Don't see it. Don't see it. If it goes on streaming, don't watch it. You know, you can trust, you don't have to trust me. Trust the critical drinker. Trust guys like that. Trust Clownfish TV and The Quartering. Trust just the fact that they kill James Bond, and that's a bad thing. That's a dumb, stupid move. Something that they didn't have to do. Even if this wasn't woke era politics, killing off Bond, is either a lie, because they'll just undo it, or it's just dumb. Nobody wanted to see that. Nobody wants to see heroes die. You know, they finally killed off Captain Kirk. They actually tried to kill him off twice, or 3 times, I think. And really, at the end, it was like, you know, by the time they actually did it, it was like pointless. It was pointless. Nobody really wanted to see that, you know, unless you could pass the torch in some way. And they sort of tried to do that in the movie where he actually dies. But, you know, other than that, there's not a whole lot of reason to do it. You know, you could retire the character. Certainly in Bond's case, there's absolutely no reason to kill the character off. They've had 1 million guys play Bond. And hopefully they'll have 1 million more. But, you know, people are going to look back on these movies during this era and just go, what were these people thinking? What were they smoking? These will go up on the shelves and be forgotten about. Maybe someday somebody will remake them and, you know, make them well and actually have Bond win. I mean, that's what I would do, right? I'd go back, take No Time to Die, you know, after 10 years and go, okay, we're going to call it No Time to Die. We're going to remake No Time to Die. But everything's the opposite. Bond wins. He doesn't drive a moped. He drives like a Harley, and he's got the 2 girls on the bitch seat, you know. So as soon as I saw that still, in case you haven't seen it, it's Bond riding on the bitch seat, and that's what they call it, on a moped, with the new Bond. And so until Hollywood finally decides, oh yeah, you know, this woke stuff is very stupid. And at some point they will, I believe. At some point, when everything's so broken and dismayed, they're just desperate for money. They will go in the other direction, because I think the anti-woke will eventually become the trend. It will become trendy to take on the woke, and they will become the new target of everything, and it will be glorious. I long for those days. Until that happens, though, don't give money to people who hate you. And trust me, the woke hate your guts. I'm Tony D, and that's been my rant.